Ho, ho, ho. Okay, here we go. So describe what the Scramble for Africa means. As you played the game yesterday, did you feel any resentment towards the African territories? There you go. I'll let you guys get working on this assignment here. Pull this bell ringer. Give you some time. You might have to research what the Scramble for Africa is. Okay, we'll talk about that in more detail today and how it relates to actually what happened in the late 1800s in Europe. How this is setting the stage for World War I. There you go. All right, so Scramble for Africa, what does that mean? So when relating it to terms of what actually happened and the game that you played yesterday, what is a Scramble for Africa? What does that mean? Go ahead, Carl.
It meant like how the European countries were rushing to gain more power from Africa.
Yeah, good job. So we talked about imperialism, right? And what is imperialism? What does that mean?
It's a policy of extending a country's power African influence or diplomacy or military force?
Look at that hard-hitting safety answering questions in here. Awesome job. Yeah, so with imperialism, bigger, stronger country taking over a weaker territory or a weaker country. Why? For resources, raw materials, political gains, economic gains, power, sphere of influence, military gains, right? So with that being said, these European countries were all looking down at Africa and saw an uncharted territory, right? An untouched presence, I guess, an untouched area of land. So with Europe, we all know it's pretty small, right? Okay. All these countries went through the first and second wave of the Industrial Revolution. So they're more modern powers. They're stronger, they're more powerful, they have stronger militaries, they have better weapons, better technology, and they have a form of developed country. They're all going through industrialization at this time. Are they limited to resources here in Europe? Yeah, right. Yeah, because they're smaller, right? They don't have as many resources or vast materials or resources like, let's say, Africa. All right. So they're looking down at Africa and thinking, wow, there's oil, there's gas, there's diamonds, there's gold, there's silver, there is resources to make rubber, okay, plastics, you name it, you name it. So really, this is an area that European countries want to try to dominate, want to try to take over. Why? So they can control these materials, these resources, raw materials to make advanced goods, to make finalized goods in their industries, in their factories. Remember we talked about those innovations? Remember we talked about those inventions that helped create a more modern society in America? Well, the Europeans have it a little bit more advanced at this time period. So as they're going down to Africa, taking over land, they are really extracting the resources from the land, from the territories, and bringing them back up to really their home country to make finalized goods out of these resources and raw materials. I know I gave an example specifically with Great Britain. They were here down at the southern portion of Africa extracting diamonds, gold, silver. They bring it back up to Great Britain. In their factories, they make what out of it? Jewelry, right? And we all know jewelry is what? Worth a lot of money, okay? So did they have to pay for the labor to extract these resources? No. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail today. These indigenous people, these native people to South Africa for Great Britain, they're forced as slaves to mine these resources, these raw materials. So they didn't have to pay for labor at all, right? So they bring these materials up, they make jewelry out of it, they sell it at the market and make huge portions of money out of it. That's just a short example of it, okay? Just a small example of it. So what is that called? That's one of your vocab terms from Monday. What is that called when they're pulling the resources from that land, this imperialistic land, this territory, and they're bringing it back up to their mainland to make a finalized good out of it? What is that called? So I have to look back to your vocab list. So what is that term called? They're pulling these resources or extracting these resources. They're making a product of it back in their homeland to sell and profit off. Carl, here we go again, man. Extractive economies. Good job. Good job. So you see how that all plays together with the scramble for Africa. These European countries coming together. Well, we'll talk about how they come together, but they are extracting these resources from these territories and making profit off it, hand over foot. Okay. So today we'll talk about the Berlin Conference. Okay. We all know if all these European countries are going down to Africa, they're all butting heads, they're all competing against one another, they're all really flexing their muscles at one another. What's going to eventually happen? What do you think? This is leading up into what? War, conflict, right? We'll talk about World War I, and imperialism is one of these main things, one of these main terms that pushes for World War I. Okay. So real quick, as we played the game yesterday, did you feel any resentment towards these African tribes? Was there a choice to pick to be an African tribe? No, there wasn't. So Carl, were you here yesterday rolling dice? Yeah, did you feel any resentment towards the African tribes? When you were rolling dice trying to win the game? Do you feel bad for them? You did? Did you? It seems like you wanted to win the game when you were rolling the dice, right? Yeah, so did you actually feel bad for the African tribe? Did you even think about them once? No, you didn't. Okay, okay. As you're rolling the dice, as you're trying to compete against the players in your game, you're trying to win as many territories as possible. Okay, so again, make sure you guys know who won your game then. So you got to count up your points. But yeah, you guys were all fighting tooth and nail to compete against one another to really win as many territories as possible. So in all reality, do you think the African tribesmen of that time period did they have a seat at the table for these conversations of really scrambling for Africa, taking over the territories? No, they didn't. So with your game, that's how it resembles this Berlin Conference, right? You guys had no sight, no thought of actually who lives there, right? Who currently lived there, okay, at that time, and really what these people would be doing for your empire. You're just like, nah, we want the territories, we want to claim it, we want to extract the resources, we want to make money, we want to win the game. Okay. So that's kind of how it resembles this Berlin Conference we're about to talk about. All right, so terms for today. Hopefully you guys had fun with that game. Like I said, add up your points in if you haven't done so. Whoever won gets an extra credit point on the test. All right, so Berlin Conference and social Darwinism. There you go. What's up, Madison? What? And I take a point away from you, I guess. Wow, that should never happen. Never happen. Oh, well, guess that happened. That never happened before. Wow. Geez. So that game that you played didn't really represent it whatsoever. You guys, I tell you. All right, Berlin Conference. What do we have? Madison, what do you have for the Berlin Conference?
From 1884 to 1885, regulated period coincides with Germany's
Yeah, good job. Good job. So in 1884, right around the late 1800s, there was a conference in Berlin. Where's Berlin at? Uh-oh. Carl? Germany. Good job. Good job. So right around this time, Germany's actually unifying as a country. Before 1880s, before the 1870s, Germany was actually separate German-speaking states. There's about a handful of them, really. There's about a dozen of them. Okay. And Otto von Bismarck, we'll mention him a little bit today. And when we get to World War I, he unifies Germany through military means. Okay. He makes Germany into a world power. Okay. It's alarming how the United States and Germany are rising as world powers right at the same time. We all know with World War I and World War II, we both compete against each other. Okay, we'll talk about that soon enough. But this Berlin Conference in the late 1800s, okay, Otto von Bismarck, like I mentioned, he is going to try to unify all these countries. Okay, we'll try to talk about these countries coming together on terms to prevent future war. Okay, he said, listen, as we're trying to expand into other lands like Africa, we need to note that we can't become too competitive. We need to make sure that our militaries don't clash together to start a war or start a conflict. Right? So this almost set terms of how Africa will be carved up, how it will be separated and taken towards these European countries. Again, was there any resentment or any idea to allow African tribes to be a part of this conference, be a part of this meeting? No, much like the game, you guys didn't care. Carl maybe cared a little bit, I guess, right? Yeah. So anyway, like I said, this Berlin Conference was to try to come to terms with these other European countries to divide up Africa, to carve it up without the means of having any African tribes be a part of it. Okay. So that's what the Berlin Conference was in a nutshell. That's how the scramble for Africa really happened, really committed, really occurred. It's much like the game you had yesterday. You guys all came to terms. Whoever had the roll of the dice that was higher had that territory, right? You guys see the resemblance and see the ties? Okay. Social Darwinism. What does that mean? Asa, what does social Darwinism mean?
The idea that certain people become powerful.
Yeah, okay. Does everybody know the theory of evolution? Charles Darwin, survival of the fittest, strongest will survive. Okay, you guys got that? Isaac, you got that? Yeah. So with that being said, Herbert Spencer, he was a sociologist. Herbert Spencer, yeah. And so he came up with this idea where these countries, as they're becoming more powerful, as they're putting a lot more time and effort into their militaries, they're going to try to survive, right? They're going to try to be the strongest in their environment. The strongest will survive, survival of the fittest. Okay. And he applies this theory of evolution to these countries at this time. As they're becoming more powerful, as they're becoming more dominant, they're going to try to compete against one another, which eventually we all know pushes towards war. Everybody knew that it was going to happen. And Europe especially, look how close these borders are with one another. They're all becoming dominant world powers, all tight together. And we mentioned a little bit, the United States doing the same thing at the same time, but they're way out here, right? We're all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. We're separated from those issues, those concerns. You guys got that? You follow me? All right, cool. All right, so social Darwinism, make sure you remember that term. Might be on a test. Will be on a test, okay? So make sure you guys remember that. All right, real quick, I want to talk about this Berlin Conference, and I want to try to review this material with you from yesterday that you went with your game. So how we can try to apply the material today to the game that you played yesterday. So European countries were going down to Africa, extracting resources, raw materials, and we all know this Berlin Conference was established to make sure that these European countries come together on terms to try to split up Africa to the point where there was no hostilities or no resentment towards one another, and that there would never be a conflict or a world war to occur. We all know that didn't last too long, but hey, it was a good idea, right? It was a good idea, right, Hepler? You'll have to stand up back there. Better not be dozing off on me. But anyway, as you're looking at the map here, who do you think has the advantage? Who do you think has the advantage? Who has the best pick of the land here? So I know in your game, when you're looking at the game, some territories are worth more than others. There's a reason for that. But looking at the map, who do you think has the most, I guess, power? Who has the best pick of the litter here in Africa? Go ahead, Carl.
Spanish.
The Spanish. Okay, I see what you're saying here. All right, I know with Britain and Spain, they look very similar, but a lot of it actually is Britain. Spain really doesn't have too much. So who do you think? Great Britain, right? So Great Britain definitely has the best choice of the land here. I know you're thinking, oh, the French. Okay, they have French West Africa. That's all desert land now. Can you do anything with desert land? No, not really. Okay, Not really. So when you're looking at the map, Great Britain actually had the best pick. Why? Because it's located where? On waterfronts, right? Why is it important to be located on waterfronts? Go ahead, Carl. Yeah, to extract the resources, right? Oh, extractive economies. You see how that term fits in there, okay? So as they're mining these areas, as they're forcing these indigenous tribes to mine these areas, extract the resources, they have to have ability to obviously have transportation to bring it back to their homeland. So Great Britain controlled a lot of South Africa, running up this river here in Africa called the what? What's that river called? It's a famous river. It goes all the way up to Egypt. Go ahead, Shock. The Nile River, good job. So that they can extract the resources, get it to the waterfront, and send it back up to Great Britain. See how that's important. You see that it's vital. Right? Also, they have control of Egypt, connecting to the Middle East. So yeah, connecting over here to the Middle East, more resources like oil, gas, right? Also, there is a body of water that links the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. Okay, we'll talk about it soon enough, but Great Britain also controlled India. Right? So if they can have access and control of this waterfront, look how easy this trip is, right? Look how easy this trip is through this canal connecting the Mediterranean to Red Sea. Right? It's so nice. It's vital. Okay, it's easy. No longer do they have to sail all the way around Africa to get to India. They can cut right through. And do you think these other European countries are going to use that canal? Yeah. So we'll talk about the Suez Canal here soon enough and why that's important. You got that, Samantha? You got that? Okay. So we'll talk about why the Suez Canal is important for transportation, for a connection to Asian countries, Asian markets. All right. So again, Great Britain having a lot of that control. And why do you think when they grouped together for this Berlin conference, why did they give Great Britain such a great pick of these territories? What do you think? Why do you think they had such a great pick of these territories? What's the reason? What do you think here? Zerby?
Because they're like relatively small territories.
Smaller? Okay. All right. Well, when you look at the land, it's quite a bit of land though, right? Why else? Why do you think they kind of dictated what went on? Go ahead, Madison. They're the most powerful country at the time in the whole world. Why? Their naval power. Okay. They had the most strongest military in the world. When it came to land, maybe not. Okay. So land army, not so much. Germany was really taking hold and having the strongest land army at the time. But Great Britain, strongest navy, one of the strongest militaries. So they kind of got the decision making and defining odds here with that land. All right. Also, real quick, with the Scramble for Africa, I'll relate it to a political cartoon. These countries had no remorse for the indigenous people. There's actually a story. You guys ever hear of King Leopold II? You ever hear of him before? No? Well, he was the ruler of Belgium. Okay. Belgium had the Congo. Right? And there's a lot of resources and raw materials there. But you know what he did to these indigenous people? A lot of terrible acts. He wasn't just the only country doing this, the only person doing this, but do you know what he did? He'd actually have everybody line up on the indigenous people, even when they're youth, they're young, okay, even the adults, the women, the children, and he would lop off part of their arm, literally their whole hand, okay, their whole arm right here from really between the elbow and the wrist. Why would he chop off their hand? Why would he do that? What's the reason for that? Every single person that he had control of in the Belgian Congo, he did this to. Go ahead, Madison. Yeah, a showing of power. Okay, showing of power. And this just goes to show what type of authority these European leaders would have in Africa. He would literally show his power by chopping off parts of their arm to show that he is in charge. If they ever try to rebel against him, that would never happen, right? Also, do you think these African tribesmen, do you think they had the ability to communicate with one another? Do you think they had this education where they could apply these methods together to try to fight or overthrow the European powers? No, they didn't. They didn't. So when it came down to it, who held the most power? These European countries. It wasn't even a question, right? It wasn't even a question. And with your game, I know some of you, the independent countries, the independent territories, might have won some more territories, but there's only two of them that actually revolted, that actually had their success holding off and withstanding these European countries. One of them being Ethiopia. Okay, so this is modern day Ethiopia right here. Okay, and they fought off the Italians. They're the only country or the only territory really to fight off these European invaders. And how do you think they could do that? How do you think they could do that? One, do you think Italy was one of the strongest European countries? No, they weren't. Militarily, they weren't. Okay, they were kind of weak when it comes down to it. Well, why else? Go ahead. Okay, yeah, so they're landlocked. So when it came down to it, maybe some of these European countries, like the Italian forces, said, "Well, do we really want this land? It's not next to a waterfront or anything. So what's the point?" Maybe they didn't send too many forces. But the Italians were embarrassed. They lost to an African tribe. Okay, why else? Why else do you think? Ethiopia is pretty close to really where Great Britain's located, right? Really close. So what do you think Great Britain did and allowed for these Ethiopians? What do you think they gave them? What do you think they gave them? Military equipment, organization, a system of a military front power to make sure that Ethiopia doesn't fall to the Italians, to make sure that they don't become a strong power here and maybe take over some of their resources, their raw materials, their waterfront access. So with the aid of Great Britain, because of the systems employed by Great Britain, maybe Ethiopia held their own because of the assistance of Great Britain. And already that's breaking what? The Berlin Conference, right? Yeah, might push for warfare, who knows? So we'll talk about it when we get to World War II, but Benito Mussolini, he's going to try to make the wrongs right with Ethiopia. He's going to send a huge military down to Ethiopia and try to take them over. And this is going to push for the Second World War eventually. All right, is there any questions on the Berlin Conference? You guys good with that? All right. You guys good with social Darwinism? Okay, so now I want you guys to work on, your questions. Oh, real quick. Let me show you this political cartoon. I was going to have you do it for homework, but I'm being nice today. So this political cartoon, there's Otto von Bismarck. He's leading the conference here. And it looks like Africa is presented as a cake. Okay, that's what it is. So Africa is presented as a cake. Bismarck's cutting up the cake and giving pieces away to the other European countries that are there at the Berlin Conference. So that represents that scramble for Africa. Here's pieces of Africa. Here you go. Let's make sure that we don't fight over it. Let's make sure that we can prevent a future war from happening. And I think it's interesting with that political cartoon and how it represents that Berlin Conference. Were there any African tribes there at the meeting, at the dinner table here? No, they're not. Okay, and that's just kind of showing how this all went down, how this all occurred, this divide, conquer of Africa. European countries just came in because they're more powerful. Survival of the fittest, social Darwinism, taking over these territories, no problem. All right, good. So real quick, answer these questions and we'll discuss it. We'll go over it. I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. And when you're finished, you can put these forms up here if you had a printed copy. I'll grade them then. Or if you did it online, you can just turn it in. Asa, since you weren't here, just complete the questions and turn it on Canvas. Chopper, you here yesterday? Yes, no? No? Okay, just complete the questions as I went over with the material today and just turn them in, okay? What's up? Yeah, that's what I was, yeah. So, did I put them in on Sapphire? Check Sapphire. If it has an EX, then I didn't get it or I forgot to put in a grade, but I'm pretty sure I got all yours in. Did you send them what's Monday night or Sunday night or something? Saturday, that's what, yeah. I believe I put them all in, so just make sure. All righty. So summarize how the game you played relates to the way European nations carved up the African continent in the 1800s. How so? How so? Madison, go ahead.
The European countries divided Africa with no regard to living there, and they did so to obtain resources, which would be prosperous.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So with European countries, when they came together at the Berlin Conference, they were all carving up Africa without any idea of the African tribes, without any remorse for them. Obviously, they didn't have a seat at the table. So it was just like you guys, what, rolling dice, right? Rolling the dice for these countries. Whoever had the larger number, whoever had the biggest, obviously number for rolling a dice, they got that territory, much like the Berlin Conference. Okay. And again, other than Carl, maybe didn't have any remorse for the African tribes. It's like, nope, doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter what they think. We're stronger, we're more powerful. We're going to take them over for our advantage. Good. Social Darwinism, right? All right, number 2. Why do you think some African territories were worth more points than others? What do you think, Zerby?
Because some like tribes were bigger and other like parts had more resources than others.
Yeah, good job. So maybe just with land wise, okay, there's maybe more African tribesmen, maybe there's more indigenous people to use as slaves. And also, when we get to warfare in World War I, what do you think Great Britain's going to do with a lot of these indigenous people? Put them on the front lines, right? What do you think Germany's going to do? Put them on the front lines. They have no tie to that country whatsoever, but hey, that's manpower. That's going to help us fight against our opponents in World War I. Hepler, right? Okay, man. Hey, you might have to stand up in here soon. I hope not. Hope not. All right, also, these territories are worth more points. Why? Because of resources, raw materials. Maybe it might be oil. Maybe it might be gold, diamonds, you name it. You guys got that for 2? Last one here. What do you notice about the number of actual countries that remain neutral to the number of countries remain neutral in your game? Well, we all know there's only 2 neutral countries. One, Ethiopia, that we know about fighting off the Italians. In your game, it might have been a little bit more. How many neutral countries did you guys have, Carl? Only 2. Perfect. You guys played it like it actually went down. Good. So for the other teams, the independent countries won. I don't know how that happened, but hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. But again, if you have more countries involved, and we all know with these European countries, they're way more powerful. Okay. They had a strong military. It didn't really matter who they were going up against. You guys got that? You see how this game relates to what happened with the Berlin Conference? Yeah. Interesting stuff, right? All right. Hopefully you guys had fun with it. Count up your scores. Whoever won gets an extra credit point on the test.
What about us?
Sorry.